Okay, well, let's get started. I'm sure we'll have some other folks popping in a little bit later, but just want to welcome everybody to the reintroduction of the TEC's community call. It's been a while, and it's exciting to get this going again. We're going to be doing these on a roughly like a monthly basis, and we're trying out a new format that is really going to be basically having kind of like a focused topic that will be at the beginning of the call. That'll be about like 40 minutes long. And then we'll have the last 20 minutes be an update on what's happening in the TEC. So the idea, like the goal behind that, to try to use these events as a way to bring in new folks into the community. And we're recording these calls too, so we'll have them up and available for people to look at afterwards. I think that the other thing that's worth mentioning is that we'll get to that later. Okay, so in today's kickoff, it's really exciting to see YGG is going to be here, and he's going to be talking about something that we're calling tunable QF, tunable quadratic funding. And so we're going to get into that. I want to just do a quick background, just kind of frame setting for how we got to that before handing it off to him. So basically, we've been doing, the TEC's been doing a Gitcoin round, a token engineering round up on Gitcoin since April this year. So we've now just finished our second one. And we love this idea of quadratic funding as a way to democratize the way that people, communities and groups of people come together to jointly decide on how to allocate resources. So like in this case, it's like how you allocate a matching grant pool. So for the token engineering grant round, we have $25,000 DAI that was set up and was taken out of the common fund. And so we're using quadratic funding as a way to do that. And one of the things we were trying to figure out is like, how do we make sure, it's such a great mechanism, quadratic funding, but one of the things, in addition to like civil protection, you also want to make sure that it's not just a popularity contest. And so one of the things that we were really interested in is trying to figure out how we could inject some token engineering expertise into the mix. And so we came up with a process for doing that. And what we've found is that actually it's not just about expertise. It's something that actually could be much broader in terms of its applicability. So we happen to have YGG, who has been with the community for a long time. And he's like the perfect guy to do this because he's actually a data scientist. So before we hand it over to him, Isaac, did you want to say just a couple quick words?
Thanks. I'll be moderating the call today. So we have first YGG for about 30-40 minutes of this call who's going to present just what Gideon said, how are we tweaking QF to explore a few things. There's going to be a space for questions and everything. Please leave them in the chat, or at the end of YGG's presentation, we can bring some people up in the stage to talk as well. And then for the last 10-minute-ish of the call, we're going to have some general updates from the TC and all the work that we've been doing. And so with no more to say, I'll pass it over to you, Sean.
Awesome. Thanks, Isaac. Thanks, Gideon, for that introduction. Like I was saying in the first couple minutes of this call, it's a very exciting time for quadratic funding and funding of public goods in general. There was a Twitter space earlier today exploring cluster QF with the Gitcoin team, and it's just so cool to be having this fast-paced innovation coming out of open source community development and public goods funding and Web3. We've been able to work with Umar, who's a data scientist on the Gitcoin team, working with cluster QF. And it's just so cool to have these minds working together. I want to give a shout out to the TEC coordination team, Gideon, Isaac, Bear, Nate, Jay Henny Art. They really came up with this idea of subject matter expert signal injection for QF. So how can we apply some weighting to the voices of the experts in terms of a funding outcome for QF? And how do we even, what does it mean to be an expert in a community? How do we explore that? There's sort of a larger concept that's been discussed here in the TEC, which is the reputation economy. And I think getting to this SME signal injection is sort of a first step in that direction, and it's a piece of the puzzle. And I think it's something really cool we're doing with QF. And the approach we've been taking recently is to build a application that we can use for the operation of our QF rounds, with the idea that maybe this application can generalize and be a contribution to the public goods ecosystem, and other communities can use this to manage their QF rounds. And it has some beautiful properties when you look at it generally, in that we're basically taking token distributions and saying, how can these token distributions be understood and even sort of modulated and parameterized to produce a signal of expertise? And when you think about that, that's a very general application that could be used outside of QF. How do you turn a token distribution into a signal? And that's what we're looking at here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Fingers crossed that this works. I run Pop! OS Linux, and there's always audio-visual things happening. We tested this the other day. It worked, so let's go for it. So I'm going to share my screen. Go live. Yes. That's a good sign. Okay. So I'm going to jump over here. Is everyone tracking? Can you see this, and can you hear me all right? I think that's a yes, thumbs up. Okay, good. So I'm really excited about this. People who have known me for a long time in the community, this might look kind of familiar. What I'm building out here, this is a panel application. It's using a Python library called Panel, which is part of the HoloViz stack of tools, which is some emerging technology coming out from the data visualization, data science ecosystem in Python. And these tools are really just coming to fruition. This Python panel library just this year had version 1 released, and so that's kind of a breakthrough. And I'm really excited to get to pioneer and show off this stack of tools and what we can do with it. What Panel allows you to do is create a complex set of nested models that are all interrelated to one another. And the cool part about this is you parameterize your models. You define the parameters of your models, the bounds of those parameters, and the types that they can take on. And when you define your data structures that way, you basically get a web app for free. What you have to do is define your data structures very precisely and how they relate to each other. And then your data just knows how to visualize itself. And it's a really cool platform. It goes beyond, if some people are familiar with things like Streamlit for building Python apps. This panel library allows you to reach a next level of sort of complexity. As you build out your apps, you can build out nested structures and relational structures without breaking the flow of the app. So that's a little note on the technology that I'm really excited about. Now I'm going to go through this. It shouldn't take too long, maybe about 10 minutes. I'm going to demo what we've got here. So we've got a series of tabs at the top. You'll see donations, token distribution, the Academy token distribution, boost tuning, the boost factory, tunable QF, and then finally we have a tunable QF math widget at the end as a bit of a bonus if we get to it. I always think of things as fundamental data structures. What is the data structure of the mechanism? What is the state of your system? And then what are the methods or operations that allow your system to change? So looking at the fundamental data structures of tunable QF, we basically have two things. We have your donations data set first, and we're going to introduce token distributions second. We're going to combine those data sets to get our tunable QF environment. So what is a donations data set? This is what it looks like. This comes out of the Quadratic Funding Manager platform managed by Gitcoin. And we have a series of fields here. I won't go too deep into this, but fundamentally, we have projects. So project ID, each project ID maps to an application ID. That's a little bit easier to look at here. We have voters that are voting on projects. We have an amount that is donated. That's essentially it to get started. That's the data set. So each row here is a donation. Based on the set of donations, you can compute things like total donation amount per project and quadratic funding outcomes. So we have here at the bottom just a few tools to take a look at the donations data set by itself. So we can group by projects. We can see each project here, the donor count, mean donation, median donation, total donation, max donation, the donor who made the max donation, and the set of donations that were made to that project. Same for contributors. We can group by contributors, get the same set of stats, and see all the donations made by each contributor. We can do what's called a pivot table to get this data structure where we see donors as rows and projects as columns. And this gives you kind of a visual idea of what's happening in the round. Each cell is a donation made by a donor to a project. And this is a nice little way to explore the structure of a round. And then we can actually render that as a network and get something like this, where we have circles as donors and triangles as projects. And the edge, this is a weighted graph where the weight of an edge is the size of a donation made. So you can get a sense of the structure of your network. This is what's called a force-directed graph. So the positioning of the nodes is actually an embedding. And so you can start to see some cluster representation. You can see, looks like around here is like the center of the community. This is like, and then we have some outlier projects. We have some projects that receive very small funding. And whoever this is like the center of the community. Whoever this donor is, they donated to a lot of projects that a lot of other people donated to, and they made some big donations. So it's interesting to scope out the structure of a community through the donations data set. Now, this is a little superfluous. Nothing I've shown so far is really new. I'm sure the Gitcoin team has tooling like this, and this was more for me to do some exploratory analysis and get an idea of what the data is that we're working with. If we keep going through here, we'll now arrive at signal injection that we're going to work with. So we have two token distributions. We have here the TEC token distribution, and we have a pager here so we can kind of scroll through this. We can see the index. So this is ordered by holdings. So the 80th highest holding member of our community has 4,000 TEC tokens. And we can navigate through the distribution of TEC token holders. This data set may be a little bit more sophisticated or interesting depending on how you're looking at it. This is the Academy credential data set. So the TE Academy has issued NFT credentials based on students completing courses and attending certain events. There's been 5 credentials issued in total. And so in this data set, we'll see people have between 1 and 5 Academy credentials, meaning if they have 5, it means they've completed all the Academy courses and attended the events that are being tracked here through this data set. I got to give a shout out to Rex. Not sure if he's, Rex here in this call, Dune Wizard, our resident Dune Wizard, who has pulled these data sets from Dune. It is such a pleasure working with Rex. He's like so on the ball, and he always has like 5 full-time jobs. So I don't know how he does it, but awesome guy. So I'm going to jump forward. This is our 3 data sets that we're going to be combining for our application. Now we get into kind of the heart of what we're producing in this app. This is the boost tuning. So how do we take these signals and combine them? what I have here is it's set up to be the default of what we ran for TEGR1, the TE Grants Round 1, our first QF round, and how we applied this signal boost. What we did is we looked at all the TEC token holders, and we said, okay, everyone who has 10 or more is going to qualify for a full boost. So you're going to get a boost if you have 10 TEC tokens or more, or if you have any Academy credentials. So it's kind of like a binary system. Either you're going to get the boost or you're not. If you get the boost, the final result, which we'll see here in the TQF part, is we put a factor of 2. So we call that the boosting coefficient. So we said that if you qualify under the TEC tokens or the Academy credentials, the donation that you submit to any project is going to be 2x'd when it gets registered through the QF algorithm. So I've set everything up with defaults to match our TEGR1, but we can explore now what we're looking at for round 2, which has finished and the results are currently being calculated. So we can use this application for the TEGR round 2 results, how we can start to tune this and move beyond the basic, what I call threshold algorithm with the threshold set to 10. So now we can explore, okay, what if we want a higher threshold? So we want to say community members need to hold 200 TEC tokens in order to get the boost. Now it's going to start to look like this. Here we have the TEC token distribution on a log scale. If we take that off a log scale, it looks like this. So you can see we have about 40 members of our community who have a very significant number of tokens each, say around 10,000 or more tokens. And then we have this sort of long tail distribution of token holders that have in the hundreds or maybe up to 1,000 tokens. So it's a bit nicer to look at this log scale, which is what we'll stick with here. Here we put we have the distribution and then the boost that these people are going to get. So if we scroll down, now that we've set the threshold to 200 tokens, we'll start to see some zeros here. So yeah, at this threshold, under 200 tokens, the boost is now cut off. So something else we can do this is we can increase the boost factor of this particular signal. So we can say we want to weigh the TEC tokens more than the Academy credentials. So, and you'll see this scale here changing as I adjust this. We could put this up to 10 and say that, you know what, TEC token holders, you're going to get a 10x boost on your donation amounts as you donate to projects, as your donations get registered through the QF algorithm. So we can start to tune this per signal, and we can look at some more sophisticated scaling, signal boosting algorithms. So moving away from threshold, which is parameterized, we can set the threshold. We'll take a look at some non-parameterized scales, boosting scales. So here we have a min-max scale, which is going to match your distribution. We can say that the amount of signal boost that you get is directly proportional to the amount of tokens that you're holding. We can take the log min-max, where we're going to get a distribution that reflects the log distribution of token holdings. We can get a normal scale. So this is normalizing relative to the normal distribution of token holdings. We have a little summary here, which is you subtract the mean and divide by the standard deviation and then center at 0.5 to get something like this. We can take the log normal scale, which is almost like a rectified linear unit, where you get this linear growth around the center of the normal distribution of token holders. Those are all non-parameterized. So we have 4 transformations here that are non-parameterized. These are good if your community doesn't want to do a lot of thinking and you don't want to have a bunch of param parties voting on parameters, but this is the TEC. So, and this is why we're going with this name tunable QF, because we start to look at some transformations that do expose parameters here. Something we can do is apply a sigmoid function over the distribution, which exposes two parameters, which is going to be steepness and shift. So we can shift this signal to the left, we can shift this signal to the right, and we can parameterize the steepness as well. We can increase the steepness and we can decrease the steepness. So by tuning these two parameters on the sigmoid function, we can really fine tune the voice that we're going for. Who are the community members that we want to maximize their voice when it comes to funding distribution? So you can see two components here. We have the input signal, and then we have the parameters of the transformation method that we're going to apply to that signal. We can look at our other signal, which is the Academy credentials. So this is what the distribution of Academy credentials looks like. We have people with 1 credentials, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we can apply all of these transformations similarly. The default that we ran with TEGR1 was a threshold of 0, so any credential holder is going to get that full boost. But we can do something like apply a min-max scale, so that the more credentials you have, the more of a boost you're going to get. We could turn that boost up to whatever, maybe we really value TEA credentials, we're going to turn that up to 5. So I think I'm doing pretty good on time. Maybe I'll just take a moment. I'll check in with Isaac and Gideon. I think 5 to 10 more minutes for the presentation. Should I stop now for questions or just keep moving through this?
No, you're good. You're good. You can keep on.
Okay, I'll keep going, yeah. So then we want to combine these signals. So we have what's called the boost factory. Once you've fine-tuned your signals that you want to look at, you can move into the boost factory and you can start to combine them. We've got loaded up here, again, the default for TEGR1, which takes a threshold level for the TEC tokens and the Academy tokens, gives a full boost to anyone who meets the threshold, and then uses this combine method, which you could look at this a couple different ways. You could think of it as the OR operator, or you can think of it as the max operator. So just for ease of the math, I've called it the max operator. So if anyone's getting a boost from TC tokens or the Academy, that's be aggregated into a factor of 1, basically. This was TEGR1. Everyone who qualifies gets a boost level of 1. There's no differentiation. So if you have either Academy or TC tokens, you're going to get that boost. We could combine this. So I've got 2 options here, which is the max or the sum. So if we're summing boosts, we're already getting to some more interesting results where you can get the token holding boost and the credential boost. So we start to see a differentiator here where we have a set of people who are both holding TEC tokens and having Academy credentials. And we could decide to give those people a 2x boost. Within this dashboard, we can continue to modulate the boosts. So instead of setting a threshold, maybe we want to set a, let's see, log min-max scale. And we're going to start to get some more interesting results here on the total boost. We can add boosts here. I'll just take a moment and say, this is a rapid development prototype. We want to get this idea out here in front of the community in a quick manner. I've been working on this for about 2 months with feedback from the coordination team, the TC advisory network, and some community members like Griff. And so we haven't gone through this with the designer. This isn't really polished in terms of the user interface. I think that's kind of a next step. But you can add boosts here. So if we hit the new boost button, we're going to load up a boost. And I think that loads up the boost that we were tuning here, if I'm not mistaken. Oops. Maybe not. No, it doesn't. It loads up a pre-populated boost that I have in the code. So we can start to add new boosts. We can remove boosts. And we can fine-tune them to really get this this total boost signal that we're looking for. So once we're happy with that, and we've got our boost factory set up the way we want, then we can move on to the tunable quadratic funding dashboard. Now, I just really got this working about 1 minute before this call. As per usual, rapid agile development. So I hope everything's working. It's pretty simple. And this, we actually have some deeper like visualizations and analysis on this in some Jupyter notebooks that hasn't quite made it into the application yet. So we've just got the data output here for now. But we can take a look at, based on the total boost factor that we're producing here over our set of community members, we can apply the boost factor per member to the donations that they've made in the round. And I've got this set up again with the default results from TEGR1, which is we set a boost coefficient of 2. So anyone who qualified would get a 2x on their donations. And we can see the results here. This might not be the easiest data table to glance at first sight, but if you take a look at here, this column called matching, this is the final output of the round without boosting. And here we have matching boosted, which is the final output of the round with the SME signal injection with the boost applied. Actually, do I have this still as the defaults? So I guess we're not looking right now because I've applied. If I set this back to threshold of 10, and this page is a little slow to update. There we go. And this was also threshold of 1. Then we should be getting here the actual results from TEGR1. I'm not sure if that's fully connected, if this updated from going back and changing that. But yeah, in theory, we should be getting the actual results from TEGR1 and how this has been applied. We can modulate this final boosting coefficient. So if we actually set this to 0, then you'll see the matching boosted is going to be equivalent to matching without boosted. And then we can modulate this in terms, this is just a factor of that total boost column we saw, the multiplicatives that we're going to apply to the donations. This is one extra multiplicative coefficient that we're going to apply to that operation. So we kind of have a boost coefficient per signal, and then also an aggregate boost coefficient that we're applying here to the total signal. So we can tune that boost coefficient. We can see what this means in the context of changing the size of the matching pool. And then we can also tune this parameter here, which is the matching percentage cap. So if we wanted to have a 10% matching percentage cap, we could take a look at what that means in the context of boosting as well. So we're putting an end-to-end dashboard together for operators that are interested in applying tunable QF and signal boosting, token distribution signal boosting. We're putting together this end-to-end application where they can really get a sense of what are the implications of tuning these signals and applying these boosts. Now, this was going to be the end of the presentation, but in the last minute, I brought back something I was looking at the very beginning, a couple months ago when I first got on this project, of like, what does it mean to have a boost coefficient on your donation? If I donated $10 to a project and I got a 2x SME boost, what's the impact? And so here we have a little math calculator where the parameters are the original total QF that a project is getting. And what this means here is if I remember correctly, it's the output of the QF algorithm. So it's going to be the square of the sum of the square roots of the donations. So this is the QF prior to you making any donation. This is your donation amount. Let's say you're donating 100, and then this is your boost factor. So you can start to get a sense of the percentage of the funding that you are, the percentage of the QF score that you're impacting. So by making a $100 donation with a boost factor of 4.8 on a project that already had a QF output of 5,000, you're actually going to increase that. This could probably be a bit cleaner and easier to follow, but you're raising. I think I'll pause on this now. It's been literally a couple months since I've looked at this, but you can find this all in the code. And my main objective with doing this presentation and bringing this to the community is to get feedback on this application and inspire people to take a look at the code. It's very early stages, so it's quite easy to jump in and start making contributions. Even if you're interested in things like design, you could just take a look at how these layouts are laid out and consider a contribution that maybe improves readability. I think I want to have more of these math explainers throughout the app. And so if you have a particular interest in math, even just verifying the accuracy of these, because, I'm a data scientist first. I love math, but I'm not like a mathematician first. And so I've had great experiences working with community members like Octopus, who just has such a sharp eye for these kinds of things. Now, I forget how much time I had exactly, but I think that's I'll take I might be a little bit over.
That's perfect. We actually have about 5 minutes that we can use for questions in general, or just to add any other comment. Again, if anyone has questions or wants to jump in, you can either request to talk in Discord. There's like a button down there where you can, similar to your spaces, or just put something on your question on the chat, and I'll ask it to Sean. But in general, I think maybe adding something as an extra comment, I think it's also very interesting. If you look at, I'm going to share injecting. If you look at the Gideon's forum blog post on injecting or incorporating expertise into quadratic funding, you can see some of like A/B comparisons of how of the results for the first round of just like vanilla QF versus these boosted, at least first version of boosted QF. And there's at least in testing or for many rounds for the first one and also the second one, which we are working on. I'll give some updates later. There's some, at least by our intuition, by boosting the QF, we get results that are closer to what we would expect from the TC community to be voting on, or to like if they were even manually adjusting results. There's one question here from Griff. He's asking, would adding more parameters that could be boosted overly complicate things?
Great question, Griff. There's different layers to look at this system and different parameters that we can explore. For example, in the transformation type, we can have like a non-parameterized transformation. But even the fact that you can select what transformation you want to apply is itself a parameter. And I think you also might be hinting at like, how do we combine multiple signals without getting lost in complexity? How do we pull apart these signals and know what impact? Like how can we talk about credentials and token holdings in the same operation? Is that comparing apples to oranges? And are we just going to overwhelm communities with all of these parameters to tune? I think that's a really fair point. I don't know what part of that is exactly your question, but I think simplicity is an important thing to strive for. So what I've done here in my approach is put a lot of concepts forward. I think some of these are very new, novel concepts, like some of these types of transformations that we can apply to token distributions. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall, throw it at the wall and see what sticks. I'm really interested in the feedback from the community on where, in what you've seen today, what should we really focus on? And also, from a math perspective, I think there's some implications we could consider in applying different types of operations and what it means relative to even different types of quadratic funding, like the cluster quadratic funding or pairwise penalty quadratic funding. Something we're considering with this team is working towards publishing a paper as the end game for this project. And I think that would be really interesting to see how this fits in the context of the greater QF story. And it's like one piece of the puzzle. It's one operation that can be applied through all the steps of striving to fund what matters. How do we do TE public goods funding really well? We believe this is one of the components, and it'll be interesting to see how it fits into the greater context and the greater story of QF. And yeah, I like the idea of having the least amount of parameters as possible while still exposing like maximum capacity for the community to utilize this approach. But it's a good point. And more param parties.
I think it's the balance between having the parameters to have the most impact with funding, but not to the point where the algorithm becomes opinionated by the operator, because you like the grantees and donors must trust the operator to be a neutral force when doing these rounds. There's two other questions. This one is from Octopus. He's asking, is there anything that you found that was counterintuitive to you, or you think might be counterintuitive for the general community?
Great question. Great question. Those are the best moments where I'm developing something like this and I'll see results and I'll immediately think it's broken, that there's a bug in my code, and I'll spend a whole day debugging until I finally realize, wait a minute, that's actually what the data is telling me. Like, that's actually accurate. Now, I feel like I've had a couple of those small moments through this development process, but none of them are really jumping out at this time. I think there's been a lot of small surprises. No one major big surprise that comes to mind. And the rest of the team might have some points. Like one small thing, in getting the actual data, there were some surprises to see how systems are being managed, like the Academy credentials. Getting to the root of this data through Dune was a bit of a exploration, and there were some funny things happening through the provider that's providing the service for the academy, and just like some funny things in the data tables to actually be able to get this data sorted. And what that leads me to is I think this process is often worth it. And with the team, we want to frame this as research first. This isn't app development first, this is research first, because there are a lot of insights coming out of this. And even the process of just getting the data led us to think about things in a certain way that we hadn't thought about before.
Hey, YGG.
Nice, thanks.
Oh, go ahead, Isaac.
Thanks for the answer. And now we're going to jump on to the last question. We have to do this one fairly quickly, just to pass over to the last section of this call. But this one is for Griff. He's asking, just to be clear, when we say 2x boost, are we saying 2x the donation or 2x the final power? There's some context as well in the question, but that's pretty much the question.
Great. It's a 2x on their donation. So if they donated $10 to a project, we're going to change that to 20. It's going to look like they donated $20 if they have a 2x boost. So it's per donation. And there's a non-linear gain. As you larger donations effectively get a larger boost, a larger relative boost. It's a non-linear gain. So that's one thing that was surprising, is that this system could also incentivize, if you know that you have a large boost, then you can leverage that boost by making larger donations. So this could actually incentivize people to make larger donations, which is interesting.
Cool, thanks. It seems like that's all. If there's any other questions, feel free to add them in the chat. Also, I guess this is fairly new. Like, we are just starting to do all these experiments, and we hope to be able to continuously have these spaces to just get feedback, but also show findings, because this is being really, really interesting. Not sure if you want to give just a last word, Sean. If not, I'll pass it over to you, Gideon, for updates.
I just want to say thanks, everyone, for the time today. This is really exciting. I hope I've inspired some people to jump in. Thanks to Octopus, who's always sort of leaving breadcrumbs along the way to follow. Thanks to Griff, who just grabbed me and said, hey, come back to TEC and do something cool, and put a lot of faith into me. And then the whole coordination team, Gideon's been a great mentor through this process, and Isaac, I've been working closely with Isaac across this whole development cycle. So just shout out to the community would be my last words.
Awesome. John, YGG, thank you so much. It's really exciting, and it's just having you back here. It's been exciting just in and of itself. Like, the energy you bring is so great. So, yeah, super exciting. One thing I just want to mention, because it may not be completely clear, but these additional attributes that we're adding in, like, these just happen to be the ones that we're using right now. But actually, this is pretty extensible. So you could imagine this being used for things like praise. So if you've contributed to a community, then we want to boost your signal. So praise is definitely a good thing that we could be looking at. But it also could be things like membership in a community. That's another one. If you're like a nonprofit and you've given to X many years, then that boosts your signal. But also some really interesting things, like you could imagine like physical communities, like your neighborhood. If you figured out a way to verify that you live in that neighborhood and you want to boost the signal for the people who live in that neighborhood through some type of an NFT, you could do that too. I mean, the sky is the limit here. It's pretty interesting. There's a lot of creative possibility. And speaking of POAPs, we are going to be issuing POAPs for attendance at the TEC community calls. So that's kind of cool. So who knows, maybe that might show up in a signal in the future. Not promising that. But just a quick update on TEC, and I'll just give a few words here, and then I want to hand it off to Isaac to talk a little bit about the grant projects, what we're doing there, and Bear to talk about ways to get engaged, and then also Nate to talk about some events that are coming. So just really quickly, the TC's been through a lot over this past year. We've, as part of the bear market, we've had to adjust, and we've done some belt tightening. We've actually cut the spending in a TC down to about 20% of what we were before, as part of the overall bear market. But in doing that, what's cool is sometimes constraints create opportunities. And I think that there's like a bunch of really interesting stuff that is now starting to emerge here. The TQF stuff that Sean and Isaac and Rex and Octopus are working on is one thing, and there's all kinds of interesting conversations that are happening going around that. But in addition, it's worth mentioning that Tam and folks at Common Stack are helping us to think about the feasibility of migrating from Node chain over to Optimism. So that's something that we'll be hearing more about soon. There's some really in-depth research. I don't know if you've all heard about the token engineering stakeholder study that Livia and a bunch of other folks have helped to run. It's like 40 plus in-depth interviews. Sean was involved in that too. 40 in-depth interviews with token engineering practitioners in the field. That will be coming out. The results of that research will be coming out probably. Tam, who's on the call, has just published a proposal for, or basically, it's really just an overview of how we're going to be rolling out a token engineering commons advisory network, TCAN. So that's already starting, and we're going to be developing that over the next. That's up on the forum. And then also some really cool stuff that's going on. Just like every Thursday, Bonding Curve Research Group is meeting and having some really interesting conversations, discussions, and that's happening on a pretty regular basis. And then Isaac, do you want to just talk a little bit about what's happening with our grants program?
Yeah, sure. Well, it seems to we are going pretty good with the grants program. We had the first round on late April, and we had the second one on August, where we saw a lot of growth. Like we had a lot of way more donors, close to. I'm just loading up the website to get the exact numbers. But we saw like there seems to be a very good reception from the community for these rounds. Like there's clearly a demand for them. On both rounds, we had just about 15 grantees. First round was like 16. In the second round, we had 14. Now, to be exact, we had more than almost 2,000 unique contributors on the second round, and with almost 2.5 thousand, 2.5K contributions. Some of them, after reviewing them, looked a bit suspicious. We are still working on that, but we are really happy, and seems like we are going to be investing a lot more into this program. Now, to be exact, for those who may wondering about the results of the round two, we just yesterday we met with Omar at Gitcoin, who's the data analyst. He's helping us do some of the civil analysis based on all the tools and algorithms that they have internally to investigate that. So we now have the files after the civil analysis, and we'll be processing all the matching boost and all other calculations these days. Hopefully, we get the payments late this week, early next week, and we move on to the next round. The following round should be happening somewhere around November, because we are a featured round of the Gitcoin grants program. There's a bit of coordination to do with them and other round operators, but we are looking at that November, December for the last round. With that, that's all. Now I'll pass it over to both either Bear and Nate for some last words. I'm trying to bring you up here, Bear, but I don't see how. You can maybe you go first, Nate.
Okay, yeah. Just wanted to add some updates on events that are going to be happening within the TE community. As you can all see, we've all been back to our, which is really exciting. We're going to continue this trend going forward each month, planning on every third Wednesday of each month to host this community call. And it will be in different formats. In addition to the community call, we will also have token engineering as a public good event series on Twitter Spaces, where we'll be interviewing token engineers in different aspects of the field regarding public goods. So it's going to be really exciting as well. Another big update is if you are a student of the Token Engineering Academy, of Engineering Fundamentals courses, they will be having minting parties on October 5th, 6th, and 9th to mint your NFTs for free. And this applies very closely to what we're doing here with the grants program and the boosts that are happening. So if you do have credentials or you've taken other courses and you haven't minted your credentials yet, this is a good time to do so. So check that out as well. And I'll pass it over to you, Bear.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. Yes, well, I would like just to give a heads up on the different type of opportunities that are out there for you to get involved. Gideon already mentioned some of them. I would also like to share some of the resources for you to get more context. You know, we have like the token engineering stakeholder study. Um, that has been doing a lot of interesting research trying to answer some of these fundamental questions about what token engineering is and how does this affect all of its stakeholders. So super interesting. You can sign up to receive the full report once that it's released. That we're hoping that it's at the end of next month probably. We also have like the BCRG group. If you're interested in bonding curve research, definitely join YGG, Jeff, Curious Rabbit, Octopus, Rex. There's just a great group of people there and really interesting conversations that happen every Thursday, 2 p.m. EST. You can always join them. What else? We also have in the forum of the TEC a lot of really interesting conversations are starting to come up in regards with the token engineering commons advisory network and its corresponding building. How is that going to look like? So you're always welcome to share your thoughts, your ideas, and be part of that conversation. Similar to the migration, this possibility that has come into the horizon of the TEC and that brings a lot of questions, but also I think a lot of opportunities that are just there in the forum for you to get involved, have your voice heard, and just contribute to the field and to the commons. I'm just gonna share here on the chat a couple of resources about some of these opportunities that I just talked about. You can just like pretty easy get more context about them. And yeah, with that, I'll just pass it back to you, Isaac.
Cool, thanks. That's pretty much for this community call. Really exciting to be back running this. Um, it's been really a really moved year. Like a lot of things have happened since the past year, where we sort of had to um, change almost everything here at the TC. But I believe in I hope that we are doing um, actually pretty good. We are in the right direction, and yeah, I think that's all for me. Look out for the recording later of this call in YouTube. I'll be also um, I'll be also be distributing some pop links later today or tomorrow. And yeah, look out for the next community call next month. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Well done, guys. Good job.
That was great, Sean. Really, that's nice.
Thanks.